Oh boy, it's been a heck of a week for tech news this week. Some really interesting stories coming out. NZXT has been called out by Gamers Nexus for scamming people. The Intel CEO has stepped down and yet got a massive payout. Intel has at the same time launched its new Arc GPUs, which is good news because they're going to be very affordable and interesting. We'll get to that in a minute. And reviews for those are coming in another week, the 12th of December, although sadly I won't be getting one. And we are going to talk about a number of other things, and I'm going to give you my opinion on them. So look at the timestamps down below to jump to the stories of interest, and check out the links in the description to read the full stories. But I'm going to jump in with the first thing, which is the OLED displays are going to get better in the near future, meaning your gaming monitor may well be improved soon. Well, not your specific one, but future ones that you'll be buying. They'll have brighter screens, less chance of burn-in, and other highlights, including longevity. So if you've been putting off buying an OLED monitor because you were concerned about the future of it with burn-in or what it was going to be like stacking up against the current tech, then there's good news, because Applied Materials, which is a big company making OLED panels, has got a new technology that they're working on, or a manufacturing process called Max OLED, which is promising to improve these problems and tackle the issues. So they're saying that display brightness can be increased by as much as 3 times, and also increase the resolution as well at the same time, and it will be reducing the power consumption of the displays as well, increasing the lifetime of the OLED panels. Apparently Samsung is using this technology moving forward, so we should see in the near future, hopefully, probably some expensive Samsung screens with the new LED panels on them. But this is promising because it means as the years go forward, we should see improved OLED, and let's face it, OLED is better. It just has had these problems historically that are now getting ironed out. Talking about expensive though, there's this InWin Infinite case that you can get, which is apparently 47 kilograms, which is pretty hefty, and has a interesting design to it with 180-degree curved glass, which apparently is very difficult to manufacture, and has some other issues where they had to basically abandon a load of them. So only a certain amount of made through tests. You also have to apply directly to the company to be able to get one. So you can't just buy them from Amazon. And they cost a staggering $7,000. That's just for the case. It doesn't even include a PC built inside, which is insane, I think, personally. And also, it's pretty hideous. It's obviously going to be for specific people's tastes, and obviously you're going to have to be pretty loaded in the first place. I think it's hideous. Obviously, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There may well be some people that think it looks awesome. It certainly looks different, and that is obviously difficult in the PC case market. We've obviously got a lot of fishbowl style cases at the moment, so if you want to stand out from the crowd with something unique, then there's this, but it is ridiculously priced and a bit insane. So it's been a pretty terrible time for Intel over the last year and a bit maybe, and obviously problems have meant that Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger has now stepped down from the CEO position. So he was brought in 2021 to help turn the company around because it was having problems back then and wasn't doing great. But it hasn't gone very well because we all know about the issues that Intel's been having recently, obviously with 13th and 14th gen CPU stability problems, and then with the lackluster launch of the Core Ultra processors that haven't done so great. They're working on microcode fixes and other things to improve the performance of them in the future. I've actually been using the Core Ultra 9 285K in a build that I've been doing, which we'll be publishing next week, and I found the performance to be pretty good actually, with some recent BIOS updates. So I think it's going all right there, but obviously the reviews and initial launch weren't great, and it hasn't been doing well. So Intel's been taking a lot of hits lately, but you can't really feel that bad for him because he has been paid out $12 million as a golden handshake for leaving. So he's done all right out of it. Obviously sad that he's lost his job, but he's getting a big payout, and who wouldn't want 12 million? That's quite a substantial amount of money for basically not doing very well. It's interesting. Now, Seasonic has listed the unannounced AMD GPU, the Radeon RX 880 XT, as a 220 watt graphics card, basically saying the GPU is going to have 220 watts TDP power draw. And this is with the tool for their power supply units. It basically allows you to work out, how much power you're going to need. So it's not confirmed by AMD at this point, obviously, because the GPU hasn't been announced yet. We're expecting to see that in January alongside NVIDIA's launch of its GPUs. So it's worth noting that not necessarily the official thing. It's just maybe an accidental leak. But it's interesting because if true, it's actually less power than the current generation, the RX 7800 XT GPU. Still planned on using two 8-pin PCIe power connectors probably, but less power draw, and yet obviously more processing power. They're saying that it'll probably sport 4,096 cores versus the 3,840 cores in the previous gen, and 16 gigabytes of RAM and other things. Well, it's all leaks and guesswork at the moment, but interesting because sometimes these sort of leaks in terms of like power supply specs, for example, suggest the possibilities of what actually could be the case, because these are obviously PSU manufacturers gearing up for the launches of new products and making sure that all their sort of tools and compatibility lists are correct and update ready for the launch, and things get accidentally published that shouldn't have been. So Intel has released its Arc B580 Limited Edition card. Now this is the affordable version that you can get of Intel. There's only going to be a few of them available, so once they're sold out, apparently they won't be available to buy any more of, so it really is a limited edition version of it. And naturally, the Arc GPUs are also getting made by partners, so ASRock and Acer, for example, is a bunch of others as well. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but there's a load of them coming, and I think there's more than there was last time, so more than the original Arc A series cards. Battlemage has more cards available from other partners, so you'll be able to get more variety. I said in the previous Prawn news it was suggested that there'd only be one 8-pin power connector. It turns out that's correct. And also that the limited edition card will only have 190 watts TDP draw, so it's actually not going to take much power, which is pretty cool. And very affordable at $249 for the limited edition, which is obviously really cheap. And this is great because I've been saying for ages, it's nice to have affordable cards again. I remember the hazy days of when you could buy NVIDIA's top-end GPUs for like £400 sterling, which would be about the same in dollars. And that was a great time. And that is more reasonable pricing. Now, obviously, Intel and AMD aren't going for the top-end like NVIDIA are. So, this isn't going to beat a 5080 when that comes out, for example. But as an affordable GPU, it's going to be pretty interesting and good to see. Also, good to see is that Intel is updating its XeSS frame generation and improving that with version 2. And it's going to be a number of improvements there to help get a better performance out of it. If you don't know already, XeSS is basically Intel's version of NVIDIA's DLSS and AMD's FSR, and basically designed to give you frame generation to improve your graphics performance, get decent FPS. It's a good trade-off between those two things. And also they've got a new technology which has helped with latency, so low latency mode will help improve that, reduce lag and other issues as well. So lots of new improvements, and not only hardware but frame generation as well is being improved too. Intel's also shared pictures of the Battlemage cards without the coolers on them. The cooler itself in the limited edition has a new design to improve the airflow through it, but with that stripped down, it was showing that it is using Samsung's GDDR6 memory, rated up to 20 gigabytes per second speed, which was previously teased a few weeks ago as well. So new RAM on board there, and so that's going to be good. So performance-wise, it should be interesting. Obviously, we have to wait for the reviews and see how it gets on. As I said, sadly, apparently I'm not getting one. I asked Intel, and samples are few and far between. So I might have to buy one when they launch properly, especially since they're so affordable, and get one in, test it out. Previous experience with the Arc card was actually, it was really good. I was surprised how well it did at 1440p, and it was fine for video editing as well and for gaming purposes. And obviously now with more driver support, more games that we'll be working with, a wider expanse of games for XeSS, it should be a better offering than previously. So if you're putting it off because you weren't on board of jumping onto a new technology that might not be as good, they're probably ironing out a lot more of the issues now. In a rare turn of events, a game that I've been excited for ages has actually moved its release date forward. Usually games get pushed back because of problems, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is actually being released a week earlier now, on the 4th of February 2025. And I have pre-ordered because I'm really excited for this game. Kingdom Come Deliverance was awesome, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 looks even better. And it is going to require some beefy specs though. So if you want to run it at 1440p, you are going to need a 4080 minimum and an i7-13700K processor and 32 gigabytes of RAM. So you will need some pretty decent specs, although it does look like DLSS and things should be available to hopefully improve the performance of that as well moving forward. So that's going to be good too. And I'm excited for this game, and it's interesting. Another game that's apparently also pretty punishing and actually requires ray tracing capable hardware as a minimum is the new Indiana Jones game that's coming. So that's pretty rare as well. So you're going to need a graphics card that will support ray tracing if you want to play Indiana Jones. So games seem to be requiring more top-end hardware now, which is interesting. So if you've got an older system, might be time to update now. Talked about Seasonic already, and there have been updates on the power supply units with 1600 watt power supplies, and also the mention of power supplies featuring multiple 12 watt high power connectors on them, for example. But an interesting thing here is they teamed up with Noctua, and the news about this came back a while ago. Basically got a Noctua themed Seasonic power supply. Obviously it's got a Noctua fan in it. It'll be cooled more efficiently and quietly, but they've also shared the design of the fan grill, which is apparently meant to reduce the noise levels by 2 decibels. So if you're worried about having a noisy power supply, then this design is obviously meant to help with that. But you can now 3D print your own. And Noctua has apparently added this to a list of various different things that it's offering for 3D printing. So you actually can download and 3D print various things itself. And for example, an airflow amplifier that you can take a 120mm Noctua fan and turn it into a desk fan, a fan duct to improve performance of fans in small form factor cases, and various other things. So pretty nice of them to share that. And so they put it on Twitter that you can download the fan grill so that you can print it out from printables.com. And that's pretty cool. Perhaps the biggest news of the week is that NZXT has been called out by Gamers Nexus for scamming people and being a scummy company and other things, and having an influencer program, which is terrible, and paying influencers to basically promote something that's factually incorrect. It's a long, in-depth video, as you'd expect from Gamers Nexus, and I would suggest watching it because it is interesting. But I also have controversial opinions on it, which I'll get to in a minute. And NZXT has also responded, and that video has not gone down well. So basically, NZXT has a rental program, and that's the main focus of the issue, which I want to talk about in a second. But basically, they've got a rental program called Flex, where you can pay them a certain amount of money each month to rent a PC from them with certain specs on it. And Gamers Nexus has problems with various aspects of that, suggesting things like NZXT's pitching it as having no cancellation fees and you can cancel at any time without any hassle, when in fact there are cancellation fees and other potential issues from it. Also problems with like the rental PCs having one spec, but a PC that you could purchase with the same name has completely different specs, so there might be confusion for the consumer when they're doing things, and changing the pricing and changing the specs on a whim and things like that. And they're using the Wayback Machine to demonstrate how things have been changed on the fly and regularly. And so there's obviously some problems with NZXT's rental program and issues there. and people on Reddit are up in arms about it. And I've had negative comments on some of my recent videos, which I want to point out quickly because I think it's fairly interesting and it's sort of something that I suffer from, and I'm sure other people do. Now, just to declare, I've never been paid by NZXT. I don't promote their products. I have no promotional videos. In fact, I've never been sponsored by anybody. And I'm not one of the influencers that people are like pushing to talk about this. So NZXT's paid a lot of different influencers, and you'd seen some of them appear in the Gamers Nexus video, some I recognized, and that was pretty painful to watch. Basically, those people have been paid to promote the rental program and to say things like how there was no commitment and you could cancel at any time, which obviously isn't factually incorrect. So those people are being slated for doing that, but obviously they were paid by NZXT to do that, so it's NZXT's fault and issues with that. NZXT has responded to this with a video which people have also criticised. I'll link to that video and I'd recommend watching that as well. There's a lot of jump cuts in it and it was basically not very well produced or not very well edited, which I think is fine because it was obviously meant to be an honest video from the CEO, who probably isn't used to doing videos. So it's a direct conversation with him, and he's not someone that's constant in front of the camera, I'd imagine. And it wasn't heavily scripted, it wasn't heavily produced, and I think it was the right move from them. Obviously, there's been some backlash on it because there's loads of cuts in there. It looks like he's having trouble with what he's trying to say, and maybe they chopped out some bits and there was issues with it and it didn't come across great. But I think on the flip side, if they'd tried to do a really highly produced video, it wouldn't have looked as honest and legit. So I think it was okay personally, but go and see. Watch the video for yourself, make up your own mind and get your own opinion on it. All that said, my opinion of it is it's being blown out of proportion in some ways. Like the whole company's getting slated for the actions of what I assume is the rental department, because I'd assume that's separate from the other areas. I've had these negative comments, as I said, on my videos where people have said things like, you should private this video. Literally, I had someone say I should private a video, which was either a review or a wiring guide for the latest crack in a lead cooler. And I'd made that video before this news came out, by the way. And also I've had other videos saying, you're promoting NZXT, are you slow or something on the recent videos, which again was beforehand and I wasn't sponsored. And I wasn't promoting them. It was just a wiring guide, a wiring and setup guide. So it's insane. So people are up in arms about this issue. But for me personally, I think, NZXT, if you're buying a cooler or a case or fans from NZXT, it's not the same as renting from them. And if the issue is with the rental department or the rental side of the business, it's a completely different thing entirely. And it's easy for companies to make mistakes when updating their websites, and especially if they've potentially got two different departments. If you have a rental and a pre-built, and then maybe even other departments, which they probably have, let's face it, operating separately from each other, maybe they weren't communicating. I'm not defending NZXT. Obviously, it is bad if they have made these mistakes and they're owned up to it. So go and see what you think of that. But the fact that people are so sort of getting angry at the whole thing makes no sense. It makes no sense to be like, I'm never buying an NZXT product again because it's the rental thing, it's completely unrelated. Also, to go around slating anybody that's making content that is just guides or reviews of products doesn't make any sense either. So there's some crazy stuff happening out there, frankly. I wasn't sure whether I should say anything about this or discuss my opinion because I realise it's controversial and maybe differing, but Gamers Nexus points out that NZXT's, focused on greed. They're being greedy. They're just trying to make money. And I thought that was the most ridiculous claim because every company is trying to make money. Every company is greedy. And plenty of companies have done dodgy things for the sake of money. If you think about, for example, the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal from a few years ago, where they were basically bypassing rules in order to sell cars and still make money, they were doing things wrong. Plenty of companies have done bad things for the sake of money in the past. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying it's not a shock that a company's been greedy and is trying to make profit and more profit and more profit. It's capitalism. All right, so I don't think that's great. I also don't think it was cool of Gamers Nexus to call out people that had been paid by a company to promote something where they were promoting it incorrectly. So Zach's Tech Turf I saw appeared in the video, and I think in the timestamps Gamers Nexus had called the influencers scummy influencers or something like that, which I thought was pretty bad. Zach's Tech Turf is all right. Obviously, he's been paid directly by NZXT for it, promoting things badly, but they probably gave him a script or things that he had to say. Not defending anybody else. I am saying it's pretty bad to be calling out people for doing something that's basically just part of their business. It's not like Gamers Nexus never had sponsored stuff going on, so it's pretty nuts. Anyway, that's been it for Prawn News. Feel free to disagree with me down in the comments, and hopefully you've enjoyed the stories. Let me know what you think, and thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend.